creatively, new projects, big things, and that's exciting, but they don't always have a grip on their money, and that is where Carlene can come in. So, my friend, let's talk about money and scaling.
Yeah, because a lot of interior designers, they're growing creatively. And a lot of them have started their business part-time, and then all of a sudden they had like success, kind of sometimes almost overnight, it seems like. And so when it's a part-time business, you don't always think about putting financial processes in place. So when you
Yeah.
grow, it's like, oh shoot, I got to catch up on this other part of my business. And that's kind of where a lot of times when people get referred to us from you guys is because that's where they are. So yeah, they feel like
Yeah.
their finances are a mess, and we try to help them make it less of a mess.
Yeah, which is the goal, and I appreciate that. Okay, so designers, I mean, most of us, not all, but most, I would say, struggle with finances. Money is not why we got into design.
Mhm.
Creativity, color, pattern, texture is. So, what are some of the common money mistakes, financial mistakes you see interior designers make as they grow? Because you can only
Yeah,
fly by the seat of your pants so long before the mistakes you're making or the things that
starts
you're
to
not doing
catch up with you.
right.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
exactly.
Yeah, and having worked, we have about 60 plus clients right now in our firm, and half of those are actually interior designers. So I've
Wow.
kind of seen like what works, but also what kind of keeps people up at 2 o'clock in the morning, kind of panicking. And so you ask, what are some of the common financial mistakes they make? Number
Yeah.
one is always going to be not separating business from personal. Everyone, when we get into business, we're like, I'm just going to grab this card. I'm just going to pay it this way. I'll figure it out later. If you are going to have a business, even if if it's going to stay part-time as a part-time business, from the
Yeah.
very beginning, at the bare minimum, separate finances, get a separate account, and just do all the business stuff in there. So even if you didn't have a financial system, which is never going to be my recommendation, but at least it's very simple for you to take and go, okay, here's all the income for the business and here are all the
Yeah.
expenses because they're in one account. So that's mistake number one. Okay.
Yep, that's a big one, and I mean,
It's a huge
truly
one.
that can really screw you up when business and personal get intermingled, and then there's tax implications. Just don't do it. Be legit,
Just
open
don't
up a
do
business
it.
account, go.
And if you were to ever get audited, the
Yeah.
IRS has a right to go into your books. Do you really want them to see how you're spending your personal money? Like, ew, no, that's none of their business. Let's keep it totally separate. So that's
Yeah. It
mistake number
opens you
one.
up to scrutiny, let's say.
Scrutiny. Yes. Oh, and really quickly, we can even touch on piercing the veil. Are you familiar with that term? Piercing the
No,
veil.
tell me about
So
it.
when you create an LLC, right, we're creating LLCs to protect ourselves so that C2 Accounting as a business is separate and protected away from Carlene LeMay, the person, right? So
Yeah.
should C2 Accounting get sued, Carlene's assets are still protected.
Yep.
When you start commingling, you could do something that's called piercing the veil, and your LLC may be determined, yeah, you have that, but you're not operating like an LLC. So now
Yeah.
your personal assets could be at risk. So, if for no other reason, let's protect your house, your kids' future, everything, and keep things separate.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like a big deal, I know, but and I agree with you, Carlene. Number one mistake, please have a separate business bank account. Full stop
Yes.
from the beginning.
Now, and granted, I will say this is a disclaimer to anyone listening. We all have grabbed the wrong card.
Yeah,
It
life
happens, you're
happens.
out, you have the wrong, oh shoot, I only have blah, blah, blah. That's fine. Just don't make it a practice. Don't make
Yes,
it a habit. That's all we're saying here. So I don't want anyone to feel guilty, but just don't make it a habit. That's all. Right.
agreed. Okay.
Okay. So number two, DIYing QuickBooks gone wrong. I hate to say it that way. So people think that, okay, I can set up QuickBooks myself because QuickBooks commercials literally say that you can. And here's my philosophy. If QuickBooks was so easy to use, I wouldn't have a business, right?
I'm
So
so
the
glad
fact,
you say that because people say, "Oh, just get QuickBooks. It's not that hard." And I have tried to do my own bookkeeping and just about pulled my hair out. I was like, "This is not what I was promised."
well, and exactly, because here's the thing what QuickBooks doesn't tell people is that if you're just plugging in some information, yeah, but as soon as something goes wrong and it snowballs, if you don't have any accounting background, you don't know how to fix it, or you don't know what it's supposed to look like,
That's
so
it.
you never know if it's wrong, right? So if you are going to DIY your QuickBooks journey, at least at the bare minimum, have someone work with you to set it up and to train you. They will never train you to be an accountant. However, they will train you how to enter your books and maintain it in a way that makes sense for you and your business. Okay.
Yes, and I love that that's a service that you do offer. Some designers
Yes.
don't need full scope bookkeeping, but they need someone to get things in order and to know the
Hmm.
basics to keep it going.
Yeah, just
Because
to get it set up and get them going, some training. A little bit of training goes a long way. And I will say, it's a lot easier to build good habits than to break bad ones. So if you have someone show you how to do things correctly the first time around, it'll save you so much of a headache later on. Yeah.
yep,
All right.
love it.
So the third thing that I see most designers struggling with is ignoring sales taxes when you're crossing state lines. So I'm in
Mhm.
North Carolina, and if I were a designer, I would be so excited if I had a job in Virginia or South Carolina. They border my states. But guess what? It's not that simple. Okay. We have 50 states, 50 different tax, jurisdictions, and
Yeah,
inside those 50 states, there are county taxes. And so you really need to understand what the tax implications are before you do a sale in another state. When I say sell, I mean usually selling products. And even in some states, it's also services. So
services.
before you say, okay, client Jane Doe, I'm so excited to work with you, just take a second to figure out what the sales tax implications are in that state, just to make sure you're compliant, because it can
Yes.
bite you in the butt long
And
term.
by take a second, you mean talk to a professional, I hope.
Exactly.
Because
And
you can
even
Google
getting
that
on a
stuff,
call,
but don't.
no, you don't. But even getting on a call with the Department of Revenue in the state you're considering working in, most Department of Revenue officials will give you advice because they want the money. They want to make sure
Yeah.
that if they're owed taxes, you are collecting it. And and I know a lot of states, and I don't know if this is only if you already have an account there, but it's called a letter of determination. So let's say you've talked to 3 different bookkeepers and you get 3 different answers. Go
Yeah.
to the Department of Revenue, explain your situation, and you can actually have them give you the answer in writing. So now you have it documented.
Awesome.
Yes. And that way, should they come back later and say you're doing it wrong, you go, whoa, whoa, whoa. I have it in writing. You guys told me to do it this way, and this is how we're doing it. So protect yourself. Get it
That's
in
a
writing.
great tip. Get it in writing. And it seems so obvious to just talk to the Department of Revenue, but I never thought about that.
Yeah.
So I like that
Yes.
approach, Carly. Talk to the source, get the
Yeah.
information, and get it in writing.
Because think about it. You could have picked someone on the wrong day. Maybe someone new, and you talk to even a couple of different people at the Department of Revenue, you might possibly get a different answer. So if you get it in writing, you're protecting yourself.
Love it. Okay. Are
Yeah,
those are the
exactly.
three big mistakes.
Those are the 3 big mistakes that people tend to do.
Okay. So what does scaling with confidence really look like? Like what do you need to start growing financially?
Okay, so if you've addressed kind of the mistakes when it comes to how you're struggling with finances and you're like now you're in that growth mode, what does that look like?
Mm,
So I would say having clean financials, clean QuickBooks is definitely a tool as you're in the growth phase, because one of the things you'll find out as a interior designer as you're starting to grow is making money does not necessarily translate to being profitable. So by having cleaner books, you're able to then determine, one, is the business profitable, but also are my projects profitable? So I
yeah.
think that's super important, and not just having books, but also actually going in and reviewing them. Um, you know, doing it and but never paying attention, never looking at reports, it doesn't really help you. So you have to kind of put on your CEO hat as much as sometimes we don't want to. We just want to stay in designer mode, putting on the CEO hat and saying, how can I use this information to actually change the trajectory of my business? And by default, change the trajectory of your financial life,
Yes.
right? Because that's why you're in business. You're in business to make money.
Yeah.
So let's make money and let's make sure that we're kind of doing that.
You need
Um,
books clean, organized, have the right financial team in place to help you go to grow and go somewhere
You
bigger.
just stole my next point. I was going to say get a
Sorry.
good financial partner.
Yeah.
There you go. Have a financial team, right? Your bookkeeper, your accountant, having, even like a good financial planner on your team, having a good insurance person, making sure you're covered, protecting what you built. Like all of that takes all that needs to happen to really have a true business.
Yep.
It's one thing to have a hobby, but when you're starting to build a business, you really have to put the CEO hat on more often than not.
Okay. So you as business owner are wearing the CEO hat. Can you explain the difference between bookkeeper? Because we hear all these terms and people think they're interchangeable.
Mhm.
Bookkeeper, accountant, and CFO, which is a chief financial officer, because they are
Yes.
all, of course, related to your money, but they are not all performing the same roles in your business. And you might not need all three. You probably, maybe depending on how big you are, need all three, but
Mhm.
maybe not.
I'm going to try to say this as simply as possible because it can get very, like, it can get kind of technical.
Yeah.
But when you think of bookkeeping, usually you're thinking of what's happened in the past, right? So we're recording what's happened in the past, using that information to generate reports. Now, my firm, we are an accounting firm. We just focus on bookkeeping, but we also do what's kind of like considered controller work. We don't want to say it's accounting because I want to talk about tax accounting separate.
Yeah.
So we're also looking at today, like we're doing sales taxes, which is things happening today. We're looking at payroll. You help our clients use the information to make future decisions. When people say accountant, 9 out of 10 times what they mean is a tax accountant. They're looking for someone to do their income tax returns. Now, tax accountants can also offer bookkeeping. They can do a slew of other things, but that's what they mean.
Mhm.
My firm could offer tax accounting. I just chose not to. But having a lot of times, I do recommend having separation of duties, having someone who is really good at tax, focus on your tax life because when you're a tax professional, you are absorbed by IRS rulings and trying to do all of that and also trying to focus on bookkeeping sometimes doesn't work out. Like I find that you can't really do both. Now, if it's a huge firm, then they have a whole dedicated
Yeah.
bookkeeping team. That's totally different. But for your smaller CPAs, your smaller tax accountants, I think that focusing on taxes is what they want to do. And I've said this before in the past, if you're growing, you want to look at someone who's not just going to do your tax returns, what happened in the past, but also look at tax planning. So you can start, saving money on taxes and making shifts on how you do things.
I'm
And
so
then
glad
the
you pointed that out. Sorry to interrupt, Carlene, because I didn't realize that like a tax person doing my taxes or even like my bookkeeper, it's not their job to help you forecast and project. You have to ask for that.
yeah.
That's different than just let's reconcile your books, let's file the taxes owed, let's do your tax return. And that
hmm
was a big learning lesson for me was realizing that I had to find the right team and ask those questions to get the guidance
Yes,
that I was missing.
exactly. I think sometimes people just wait for the professional to tell excuse me,
Yes.
to tell them what they need, but you really do have to be proactive and say, "This is what I'm looking for." And not be afraid to change if the firm that you have isn't the right fit. I mean, I realize that I don't work well with everyone, so I don't think, it's okay if the person that you're interviewing and please interview people before you hire them. If it's not a good fit, find someone else that works well with how you want to run your business.
Yeah, I mean, this is a team member. It's not an employee, but it's someone
Yeah.
who is really like integral in the health and scaling and operations of your business.
Yes, and that's a good thing to say. If you think of them as a team member or as a partner, then
Mhm.
I think the way you handle that relationship is much more different than if you just view it as transactional, like I pay them, they do it, it's done. But if you lean into their expertise, it can definitely really benefit you and get, I think, more returns than what you're actually paying for.
Yeah.
Because, we go above and beyond for our clients. And I was just saying earlier before we got on live is how I've become friends with a lot of my clients because I want to make sure that they are taken care of, that they're cared for. So lead into those relationships.
Yep, I love that, and you need a great team. So, if you're a designer watching and you're like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, like, this is good, like, my business is growing, I'm making money, like, I wanna get bigger." Carlene, how what do you and your team do to help with scaling? Because these are all, like, those fancy business words, like, "We wanna scale, blah, blah, blah,
Right.
revenue." What does that actually practically look like for an interior designer to work with someone like you and help them scale?
So the cool thing with our firm is that we have built our firm to work with designers at every stage. So if you don't have QuickBooks, you're using a spreadsheet and you're ready to not DIY the setup yourself, we do that. We'll set it up. will help train you, support you, right? If you already have your books and you think, I'm not big enough to outsource, but I don't want to do it alone, and that I want to have someone in my back pocket that I can reach out to.
Mm.
Two, we have now what's called our monthly foundations review tier, where we will go in and support someone. We will clean them up. We will do some training. We are there to answer questions without them having to Google things and go to QuickBooks and try to figure it out themselves.
Yep.
And then quarterly, we do a review call. So they're getting that one-on-one answers to questions. And we're telling them monthly, like, hey, this is what we saw in your books. It was wrong. This is how you fix it, so that they're kind of being supported. And then as they grow, they
Yeah.
can move into monthly. And as they grow and they're ready to start tracking things on a project level. So we literally can grow with you as your business grows, because once you find a good partner, you want to hold on to them.
Yeah. And they get to know your business. You've got that good relationship. I like that you've
You
structured
understand their
things so
books.
that it goes from
Mhm.
like beginner of like, I know my books are a mess, please help me, to the quarterly and then the monthly, and you can get even more. And I love that you address the project-based work, because I hear a lot more designers now wanting that information. They want to know exactly what was the profit margin on this specific project. What was I making enough on furniture, design?
Mhm.
So I like that you can help with that, because we all know how fun those numbers are to dig up after the fact.
Yeah.
When you don't
What
have
do
the
you guys
project
is it called,
review.
you guys call it an autopsy, right? Is that the term that you use?
I
I
think some
heard someone.
people do. Nancy
Yeah.
has a tool called the Job Profitability Analyzer that we have
Oh,
available. So
I
we
like the very fancy term.
It is fancy. It also scares people because it means having to find numbers. So I'm hearing more and more designers wanting this information. So I love
Yeah.
that you can get them to that level too.
Yeah. It's smart. It's very smart on their
It
part.
is.
So
Okay.
cool.
So all right. So we've talked about big struggles, what it actually looks like to scale with confidence, how you guys, C2 Accounting, help designers scale.
Yeah.
You got time for a few questions that have come up from our
Sure.
designers in Nancy's coaching world?
Yeah.
Okay. These are just a few examples. I've taken these from, multiple sources, but these are the general questions we get a lot of.
Fire away.
What financial reports do I actually need to look at monthly? Because my bookkeeper sends me stuff and I don't know what to do with it.
At the bare minimum, profit and loss, and also your balance sheet. At the
Okay.
bare minimum. Yeah, those two.
Okay. And you're just looking to make sure that you're not in loss.
Yeah, you want to make sure. Well, here's the thing. What we'll say is, if you are an interior designer, you understand that money's coming in one month and then procurement's going out the door another month. So when you're looking at it on a month-to-month basis, you may see a loss on a particular month, but you also want to make sure that you're looking at it on a year-to-date basis. So hopefully your bookkeeper is not just sending the report for that month, but also a year-to-date as well. So you can see a more holistic. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Another question we hear a lot: what's the difference between owner's pay and a salary, and how do I set up owner's pay, and which one? What do
Yeah.
I
So unless you have chosen to be taxed as an S corp, so if you're just an LLC, so if you're a single member LLC, or if you're a partnership, you're taxed like a sole proprietor, right? So
Mhm.
if Carlene just opens her LLC, now C2 Accounting has elected to be taxed as an S corp. So once you do that, then you can actually be on payroll. But
Yes.
before that, you can pay yourself an owner's draw, but it's not a salary, it's not payroll. You can't do payroll taxes, none of
I was
that.
just
You
gonna
can
say
just
you're not contributing to Social Security and payroll.
Well,
Oh,
you will on the back end when you do your
yes,
taxes,
not
right? But
in your paycheck
exactly.
like you would if you were an employee of
Exactly.
a
So
company.
if you have not elected to be an S corp, please do not set yourself on the pay. Like, don't go to Gusto or QuickBooks Payroll. I've seen people do that, and they just think, I'm going to do this, and like, no, legally you can't. So yeah,
Wow, okay, that's great advice. I didn't
yeah,
realize
it's
you had
yeah.
to be an S corp or filing as an S corp to
S
be
corp or C corp, you
on
have to be a corporation for you as the owner to be on salary.
payroll. Okay, so then
Mhm.
how does owner's draw fit into that? If you move to payroll, does everything go through payroll? Do you still take an owner's draw? Is it a mix?
Yeah. So once you're an S corp, you most everything would go through payroll, and then you would do it like distributions. And most people will say try to do like quarterly distributions. And so there's a tax, and this is where we're getting to some tax stuff, but there's kind of a rule of thumb. Like, obviously, you should take more on payroll than you do in distributions, because the tax application is different. And the reason the IRS allows if you're an S corp, the net income of the business after payroll to be taxed as like normal income. You don't pay like self-employment taxes on it.
Yep.
So by law, you have to pay yourself more in salary than you are taking as like owner's draws or distribution. So again, that's where you want to talk to your tax accountant so they can
Yes.
give you that exact number, but that's kind of the rule of thumb.
I love it. So this is where your financial team comes in.
Exactly.
Bookkeeper, tax accountant, and figuring out what is right for you in your
Because if
business
you
area.
me, I'm going to tell you, go back and ask the tax accountant.
Yeah, ask a tax accountant. Okay, last question, and I love this one because we hear this all the time. How do I know it's time to stop DIYing my books and hire someone? Because people are very afraid to take that leap and spend money on something that should be easy because I should be able to do my own QuickBooks. How do you know
Ooh,
when it's time to call in backup and have someone
yes.
assist?
First, I would say never guilt yourself for thinking you should be doing something that you can't because you weren't trained to do it. So like let's just take the guilt off the table right there. I will say that when you should stop DIYing your books is one when you find that you're making a lot of mistakes.
Mm,
When you find that it's taking a lot of time because time is money. So if you're looking at our transparency, our rates are on our website. So our minimum monthly bookkeeping, not like the DIY support, just like if
yep,
we're going to take it off your plate, starts at $5.15 a month. Which for some people, like, whoo, that's a lot. How much do you charge an hour? How much are you charging for a consultation? So
mhm,
if it's taking you 3, 4 hours, 5 hours a month to do something and you charge, let's say what's is 250 a reasonable hourly rate for an interior designer? So let's say it's taking you 4 hours a month. That's $1,000 that you could have been spending doing your time doing something else. So in that case, hiring a bookkeeper saves you money. So like anything as a business owner, you have
yeah,
to look at what does it cost you to do it yourself? And if you can
yes.
outsource it cheaper, then outsource it.
Yep, absolutely. And if you can spend that time getting new clients, booking another consultation, doing a few more
Mhm.
billable hours, you have covered it and then some. And I love that
Right.
example, Carlene, because that's exactly what happened to me. I was doing my own books back in the day, made an error. I realized later I had like transposed a number and it took me, and this is embarrassing. I should have just given up, but it took me like 6 to 8 hours to fix.
Mm,
And at the end of that, I mean, it was like an entire Sunday I spent trying. So I lost a weekend and I lost 8 hours of my life to QuickBooks.
right.
And after that, I just had that thought like, oh my gosh, if I had worked 8 hours and billed that at my hourly rate, I could pay for a bookkeeper 3 times over for a month. It was like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever done trying to keep control of this and do it myself. So
Exactly.
if you've had a similar moment, and I know you're
W
out there because
Wait,
we've all
wait.
had it.
Can I
Yeah.
share my moment? I'm a
Yes, please,
bookkeeper.
please.
I own a bookkeeping firm. One of my team members does our bookkeeping because I don't have time to do my own bookkeeping. Like seriously, I got behind on my own stuff because, now granted it takes me a lot faster to catch up, but I
Yeah.
was like, you know what? It's even time for me as a business owner to say, you on my team, I am now your client. If you will do my
Yep.
books like you do everyone else's. Yeah. So
I love
it's
it.
it's a business owner thing. It's not just it's not the fact that I can do it. Yes, I'm way more qualified to do it, but I as a CEO, I have more important things to do than doing my own bookkeeping.
Mic drop. That's the same
I
thing
need to get a I need to get a
too.
mic just to do that next time.
Virtual microphone drop.
Yeah.
This was awesome and so in depth about finances and taxes and scaling and growing and what you need to know. So if you missed the beginning of this, please go back and rewatch it. I love, Carlene, that you are empowering designers to grow and scale financially in whatever way works for them. It's not
Mm,
you must have a bookkeeper. It's you might just need some support getting set up and then evolve. But the bottom line is if you want to scale, you have to have a handle on your finances, whether you are doing it, whether you have a team doing it. You cannot grow if your money is messy.
there you go. I have nothing to add.
All right, Carlene, thank you. If anyone is interested in Carlene's services because she's incredible, C2 Accounting is her firm name. And if I'm not mistaken, you have a really great blog post that ties into what we talked about today as well, correct?
Oh,
I don't
that's a
know.
good question.
There was
I
a
don't know.
link here, but it's a
Maybe,
long link, so I'm not going to say it
yeah.
out loud, but just it's
It'll be
bookkeeping.
it'll be in the show notes.
You'll
Yeah.
find it. Exactly. It'll be in the show notes. So if you're thinking about expanding, go back and watch this. This is the financial advice you need before taking that next step. So, Carlene,
Yeah.
thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for
And
having
we
me.
will see you again in the new year. Bye, everyone.